Alrighty, continuing on the Nin theme, got another game for you guys here. This time I'm up against Tricky 8, and you can, I'm sure, immediately tell from my hand this is not the budget version of the deck. I switch back to the main version. I just wanted to test Kefnet some in the regular build to see if it really matches up to its reputation and renown in the budget deck. So far, data is inconclusive, but got to play more games to see that. Alright, I am going first this game, actually, which is very fortunate because I'm up against Yisan the Wanderer Bard. Yet another one of the crazy 3 green mana options available to people playing Commander in mono green, stacked alongside Omnath and Nissa, Azusa, and of course this guy. I think Yisan has the potential to be the best of all of them. If you get a good draw, especially if you draw a turn 1 mana creature, or a Soul Ring, or a Mana Crypt, or Mana Vault, and you have the ability to ramp Yisan rapidly using the various free untap creatures that allow you to return force to your hand, you can just cascade into a crazy assortment of stuff and combo kill by about the 4th or 5th turn of the game, which is pretty damn good for consistent mono green ability. It's not too hard to disrupt, as Yisan himself is not all that tough, but if you're able to get a Sylvan Safekeeper out, that often gives you enough protection, barring your opponent having a good sweeper like Toxic Deluge or something, to just run away with the game. So this is a very dangerous commander. I haven't faced it too much. I know it's banned in some versions of Commander and isn't as popular as some of the other 3 green mana options, but I'm expecting a pretty tough game from it. And I think I've seen Tricky 8 play before, and his decks tend to be pretty solid. So I've got a very keepable hand. It's kind of mid-range. I love having Copy Artifact and Vandal Blast because I have the ability to piggyback off of an early Crypt or Soul Ring, first copying it and then blowing it up, which is extremely satisfying. But unfortunately, I don't have any artifacts of my own to go with it in case he doesn't have an artifact, so it's a bit speculative, but I think this is a better hand than I'm going to expect with a 6-card random hand, though I don't have any removal or counter magic, which is a bit dangerous. Truthfully, though, unless I have a 2-mana counter, I don't expect to be able to stop Yisan because they're probably going to have it out by turn 2 a sizable portion of the games anyway, and I don't have that many 2-mana counters that can stop it. So I'm really going to just play for the board afterward using a Tutored Sweeper or something to that effect. I do have Factor Fiction, which is very nice, as well as mana to cast it. So here we go. I'm playing a fetch land. I have plenty of land right now, so I want to thin already and go grab my Steam Vents and potentially represent something here with this too. And he goes turn 1, Llanowar Elves. All right, so it's a guarantee I'm going to be facing Yisan next turn. Really, really want to top deck a 2-mana spell here, maybe a Daze or something. Daze would be amazing. Could just hard cast it. All right, come on, deck. Bribery. Huh. Well, that is a very, very interesting card to pick up. And that's going to give me a long-term strategy against this deck because experience proves that they tend to play a very steady ramp of creatures all the way up into the crazy 8, 9, 10 mana range. So Bribery, I think Yisan gets any type of creature. I'm going to check. Let's see, it's green. Converted mana cost. Yeah, it's just a creature card. So I've seen these decks using Eldrazi's and stuff. And if it's one thing that mono green generally cannot handle, it's an opposing Eldrazi creature. So Bribery may be able to give me a way to beat him, even if he gets his entire commander chain going, which of course he's going to, since I have no way to stop it at the moment. So I'm just going to play Nin here. There's no reason not to, since I'm pretty certain that he would just run his commander out into 2 blue mana regardless, since that's how the whole deck functions. He's not going to be afraid of it, and he'll just cast it again at 5 if I do counter it. So I'm just going to play Nin. Small potential here that he might be stuck and doesn't have a 3rd land, in which case playing Nin gives me the ability to kill his Llanowar Elves as well and slow him down even further. But unfortunately he does have a forest and plays the obligatory Yisan afterward. All right, I'm really hoping, man, I really want to draw removal, or I want to draw an artifact to start copying. A Felwar Stone or something would be fantastic right now. Even a 3-mana thing. And I get Mystical Tutor, which is not an artifact, but pretty damn good. That, combined with the 4 mana that I have, means that I have the ability to Rolling Earthquake this board in turn or 2 after he's extended and put some creatures into play. So I'm going to just play a land here and say done and see what happens. See how much he commits to using Yisan on his turn. And before giving me an opportunity to even do anything, of course, he searches up. Why the hell why is that not Ule? Figure if Ule designed this card, he at least has the right to have his picture on it all the time, rather than this random dude there. It's kind of funny. I wonder how he feels about that. But regardless, the creature is out and effective. And so I fully expected him to just say done here. And oddly enough, he chooses to attack with Llanowar Elves. So I was planning on quaking the board away anyway. I might as well save a life point. I gave some thought to shooting, having Nin shoot herself for 1 here, or potentially even playing another land and having her shoot herself for 2. But I don't really know what's in his deck, and if he's able to somehow tutor up a creature that puts counters on something, like if he threw 2 counters on to Yisan the Wanderer Bard and suddenly it's got 4 health, I lose the ability to get rid of it. So I don't think I don't feel safe taking that kind of a risk. So I'm just going to block here to save a point of damage. I will get Nin back later when it matters. Go fetch out my Volcanic Island, and I'm just going to tutor during instep. And of course, it's the Rolling Earthquake right there. Alright, quake those 2 away. Nice Sylvan Safekeeper, bro. Another thing I could have actually done there that might have been interesting would be to use Nin during end step to shoot his mana elf, the Sylvan Safekeeper. He would certainly sack a land to counter it, which would mean that I'm basically just paying 3 mana to Stone Rain him at instant speed, since he wouldn't get to draw a card off the Safekeeper, since it would give it Shroud. And that would kill one of his forests and slow him down dramatically. And I might have been able to do that for a few turns. Like I could have untapped and shot it a second time, forcing him to sacrifice another land. And that would have prevented him from using Yisan again, at least for a turn or 2, while killing forests. And in retrospect, I think that probably would have been a better play, rather than sort of pressing the panic button and killing everything. So just something to consider. If you're ever playing Nin against a Yisan combo and they get Sylvan Safekeeper out, remember that you can just chase after the Sylvan Safekeeper and force them to keep it alive by sacking all their forests. I mean, he'd be down to 1 forest and a Llanowar Elf, which would mean that he'd have to play another one just to use Yisan a second time to get a 2-mana guy, and at which point I could pull the trigger on the Earthquake, or maybe even get him to sack another land first, since I can just do it later. Anyway, something to consider. And he plays Azusa, which is an odd card to see in Yisan, since it normally doesn't really play a ton of land, given the fact that you can just tutor chain all the way up to big guys. But that is not the case in this deck. He's already got 6 forests out. So the forest destruction plan wouldn't really work very well anyway. But just something to consider. I'm really hoping to draw a land here because I want to just slam his biggest guy before he's able to get Yisan back online. But unfortunately, I just draw Muddle. So I'm going to sit here and say done, having the ability to either counterspell, maybe a big green sorcery, like, I don't know, Court of Calling or something, or I can Factor Fiction at the end of the turn when he presumably plays his Yisan the Wanderer Bard. And sure enough, he does it. So I'm going to Factor Fiction in response here, hoping to get lucky and maybe get a Force of Will to stop it and buy myself even more time. But I really want land too, of course, to cast a Bribery. And I get a really interesting Factor Fiction in that it has 2 accelerators, the land I need, a Brainstorm, and Veldican Shackles. And this is a really awesome set of cards to flip over, because I don't know what's in his hand, but he certainly can't let me have Yisan the Wanderer Bard. He doesn't know that I have no further land in my hand and that he can safely give me the Shackles right now, because I may not draw a land for a while. So he thinks for a while and he does this split. And of course, this is a no-brainer pile 1 split, since I really want the land anyway, and my intention is to just Bribery him and take something huge. And if I'm going to do that, I might as well get 2 mana artifacts and a Brainstorm to go along with it. So I'm going to grab all 4 of those. Yeah, nice. All right. Let's see what the Bribery yields in a second. Take 1. All right. Spell Pierce, not particularly useful, but what can you do? All right. Let's see what it says. There we go. And look at this. This is so strange. I mean, look at his deck. How many forests is this? 4 times 3, 6, 9. Wait, I lost count. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. That's, good lord. That's 66 forests right there, plus Jeweled Amulet and Soul Ring. And no Mana Crypt in hand. But weird. What a weird deck. So much land. And then just a steady progression all the way up to Craterhoof Behemoth. So it's definitely an interesting take on this deck. Not how I would build it, but it can be extremely effective. He certainly has no problem chain casting his guy all day long, and it's definitely a very strong indication of not only why he took away my Veldican Shackles, but also just as a devoted strategy designed to completely abuse the commander. So looking at his creatures, of course, I'm going to take something big, and there's a few good choices here. There's Craterhoof Behemoth. That's not very useful, of course, for my deck. There's Elder Scalar Worm, which is bizarre. 7/7 for 7. I guess he's just using that as defense. There's an Eternal Witness, which is interesting because it could go get Rolling Earthquake back, but that's not really that interesting. There's a Hornet Queen, kind of cool creature. And then there's this guy, Liege of the Tangle. Trample. Whenever Liege of the Tangle deals combat damage to a player, you may choose any number of target lands you control and put an Awakening counter on each of them. Each of those lands is an 8/8 green elemental. They're still lands. Holy shit. Well, you can see, you can imagine how insane this card is whenever it connects from his deck. And although he has no way to give it haste, it is pretty devastating. And I don't see any way that he could possibly deal with it. So that makes it a no-brainer. And of course, I'm going to choose the Liege of the Tangle. We're going to do some tangling ourselves. I don't think his deck is prepared to deal with this creature. So he sits here for a little while and he uses his Yisan. He's going to get Querying Ranger, of course, to go and tap it, use it again. It's just grotesque how fast this thing can just pile up counters on it. I mean, it's just nuts. It's already at 2. Next turn it's going to be at 5. And then a turn or 2 away, it just suddenly goes lethal with the Craterhoof. Pretty gross. But in the meantime, he's got to contend with this Big Papa smash. So I hit him for 8. There's no point in even chump blocking since it tramples. And I get 5 8/8. In addition to that, yes, of course I would like to use the ability. Yes. Yes, I would. That is a lot of power. That is insane, right? 6 8/8. Okay. Well, the question is, do I do anything else? And if I do anything else, what is it? I could Brainstorm and hope to get lucky to draw some form of removal. The Muddle into a Snapcaster to recur the Rolling Earthquake is a tempting thing, but I really don't want Yisan to sit around. So I'm going to take the safest route, and that's simply to transmute Muddle the Mixture to go get what I thought was a Braid in my deck. I was certain that I had a Braid in my deck. I was pretty sure that I put it in there, but when I go searching, well, I noticed that there's no Braid at all. I have both Rift and Into the Royal, so I choose to just take Into the Royal here as Rift has more flexibility later on, if it comes to that. But for some reason, I don't know where the Braid went. It needs to belong back in the deck. It is such a good card, but I'm going to Into the Royal Yisan, get him back in his hand. I'd much rather it be dead and cost 7, but what can you do? He's still got to contend with the crazy 48 power of creatures I have in play when he's at 19. So he thinks for a while. He plays Polukranos, which is not going to do anything. World Speed Bump. And then he plays Sasaya Horichi Ascendant, which I imagine is quite amazing in his deck most of the time, given the fact that he's playing with whatever we saw, upwards of 70 lands. But unfortunately, he only has 2 cards in hand, so that's not doing anything. He untaps his guys just to screw around, returns some lands to his hand, hopefully to activate this thing next turn. And he says, done. And I draw Kefnet. Yes! Very relevant in making an appearance. And I do have 8 cards in hand, so I could play it as a 5/5 flyer, indestructible, but we've got bigger things to do, like attacking with these lands. So here I am, attacking with 48 damage. None of these guys trample except for this one, but man, I mean, what can he do, right? What can he block with? He sits there and he lines up his blockers, and he realizes that he's basically going to cost him all but Polukranos, and he's still going to take 16 damage and be at 3, facing all these threats with really nothing going on. With that in mind, he scoops it up. So, pretty quick game, although it took me 13 minutes plus to talk about it. Figure you guys would enjoy that, though, as just a demonstration for how you can contain obnoxious commanders like Yisan in the early game, and how Bribery can just be absolutely backbreaking against certain decks. And this is a prime example of why I still use the card, even though some people have taken it out of their lists. Hope you enjoyed that game. I've got one more to record. See you soon.